stay liquid, keep as much liquidity as you can. Or if you're prepared to go all out, I mean, like literally, talk to a friend about sleeping in their couch with a sleeping bag kind of situation, really understand that whatever you're planning for your business to launch and execute, etc., plan for bigger delays, more expenses, more uncertainty in the market, whether it's tariffs, whether it's labor laws, etc., your cost of materials, your cost of labor, all of that is going to go much higher than you anticipate. And most permits, most things take longer than you anticipate. So talk to somebody who's walked those exact shoes before, who's done exactly that before, and ask them how much additional risk is there in today's environment, and be very careful.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Sandhya, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce the last name, but I'll let her share it. Sandhya started her journey, grew up in India, and parents wanted to come to the U.S., so she ended up coming to the U.S. Via scholarship to go to a university here. Got a electrical engineering degree. Worked for a bit of time at a large business, and then afterwards got an MBA. I wanted to have a bit of a different work-life balance, so shifted gears a bit and got more into real estate investing, and then got a number of properties and also invested in the oil and gas business, and then afterwards shifted to helping others investing as well. So with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Devin. It's a lot of work to put together a podcast. Kudos to you for doing that.
Absolutely, and excited to have you on and looking forward to a great conversation. So with that, yeah, maybe just to kick things off, maybe I gave a short overview or a quick run through of your journey, but let's rewind a bit and tell us a little bit about growing up in India and then coming over to the U.S. on scholarship.
Always dreamed of the United States, fast cars, and movies like Top Gun and Ferris Bueller were my motivation. Parents made about $60 a month USD. And so it was going to be a little difficult to afford that college over here. So the only way was to get a scholarship. Managed to get one, landed with 2 suitcases in Dallas. About $8 a week was my food budget. Got my degree, got a job right out of campus, and haven't looked back. Electrical engineering was phenomenal, and got an MBA because the combination of
so just so we don't run through all of your journey in about 2 minutes, let's or slow down just a little bit and unpack that a bit. So you're growing up in India, or what kind of prompted or how did you decide to come to the U.S. and or what was that kind of process of applying to the university and going and deciding the direction you wanted to go there?
Music, especially. I mean, you hear all this lovely music, you watch movies, and you want to come to a place which has, tall skyscrapers and 4 lanes of highways on both sides. And that's what led to my journey to come here. This was my dream. And I spoke to a couple of others in India who had actually done it and just followed their path, which is, hey, even if your parents gave you your life savings, you ain't going to make it. So you need to get a scholarship. Somebody else has to fund that. So go take your, courses, your test scores, all of that more seriously, get that recommendation. So I had about a nice 2-year time window to get my act together as a teen and really get a very high, really good scores and recommendations to get my admission. And I came to Dallas, and that's how that happened. This was the only college that offered me a scholarship. All the others, I had 2 other colleges that gave me admission, but I had to figure out how to pay the fee, and that wasn't going to happen because just didn't have that kind of money.
No, that makes sense, and sounds like it was a good opportunity to study and to get a good background on that. So now you come over to the U.S. You studied that, and I think as an undergraduate you did electrical engineering. And as you're now coming out of undergraduate, kind of where did you go from there, or kind of what was the next step in the journey?
I did my master's and double E also, and that's when I got into Texas Instruments in Dallas. And a few years into that job, I realized marketing and salespeople were making all the decisions, and I didn't understand how a business ran. I only knew my technical side as a failure analyst for Texas Instruments, and so I was sitting through all these meetings, wondering how did they make their decisions. And that's when they had this evening and weekend part-time MBA program partnership with the same local college. And so I applied and got in and did that for over 3 years. 60 credits took me a while, but I learned a ton, joined several investor clubs and expanded my network beyond the technical world into the business world in Dallas. It's a strong, nice network that I still stay in touch with. So thanks to those investor clubs, I learned how to invest in stocks, trading stocks. And so after a few years of doing that pretty seriously, I realized that my stocks, my investment income was just as high as my base salary as an engineer. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm not tied to this W-2 anymore. I could do what I wanted. So yeah, the power of
No,
investing.
that makes sense. So you go and say, okay, I want to have a bit of a different direction and stay within the career path, and then maybe go on a bit of a different trajectory. So you go and get the MBA. Now, as you're coming out of MBA school or otherwise getting the MBA, was it continuing to work for a period of time for Texas Instruments, or during that time did you transition to pursue a different path, or kind of maybe walk us through that a bit?
Yeah, during that MBA, I went from a more technical role to a business role. I went on to running programs. I did marketing as well. So now I got a really nice view of all sides of Texas Instruments, from the prototyping to the production to running programs to marketing, where I worked with salespeople. I went to all these trade shows. I visited customers, etc. So I got a really nice overview of all the different roles at TI from a technical as well as business perspective, and that was just invaluable experience. And so of course my network expanded. Now I could talk to engineers, but I could also talk to the salespeople, and I could also explain some of these engineering concepts in simpler terms to the buyers, the purchasers, and all these major customers, etc. That was a priceless experience, I would say. And that's what led me to realizing there's more to this life than strictly the technical side of engineering. And then once the stock market and investments, they were all doing really well, it's like, okay, now W-2 is kind of optional. Then, I was married and I started having children, and then it made sense for me to just, trade stocks a couple of hours in the morning, and then I was done, and I could spend the day with actually as a full-time raising my kiddo instead of leaving it up to daycare. And so that was a lot of fun. That was a great experience.
No, that definitely sounds like it was a good experience. Now, or it sounds like so you went through, got the MBA, kind of had that experience and doing a number of those things. And then you'd also, I think, touched on or looking to have a bit of a change in work-life balance. So maybe walk us through kind of that transition or shift as to kind of where you were, or how you, or what you wanted to do or pursue differently, and how you went about accomplishing that.
I didn't want to miss out on a lot of the milestones that I was seeing with my kiddo. My mom was watching my kiddo for a while, and then we were looking at daycare, and I was just unhappy with that. I had to travel a lot. I love travel. I still love to travel, but going away for 2 weeks at a time on international business trips just wasn't as exciting as it was when my pre-kid era, shall we say, before I became a mom. So now it was like, I can't be away from my kiddo for 2 weeks straight. Kind of feelings started happening, and I was like, okay, why do I need this job? What is this job costing me? How many hours is it, etc. So TI was a phenomenal training institute, and I think if I didn't have a kiddo at that time, I probably would have stayed on forever because I loved my job so much. But now the
Mm.
priorities shifted, and so I needed something that allowed me the intellectual pursuit, which the stock market did, and then the time with a kiddo was precious. And then the only missing piece was, okay, where's my people interaction? Because I was trading on my own with computers, and so once my kid got older, got into school age and stuff, I was like, okay, I need to do something else, but I don't think I can commit to that, 7 to 7 kind of work schedule that I was used to, and then travel at, short notice kind of lifestyle. So I needed something else. And that's where the entrepreneurship world came in. I didn't quite come up with some cool, innovative product. So I turned to real estate, analyzed single family, and said, there's just not enough money in single family rentals unless you have the huge appreciation of properties like you did in California. We didn't have that in Texas until the last few years. And so that just didn't make sense for the amount of work it entailed. And I didn't grow up with a handy background, to be able to fix a leaky toilet, kind of thing. So I felt like I'd get ripped off by a handy person. And I just didn't have the background to do a flip myself. So it just seemed like stocks was so much easier because I didn't mess with, things that were not my field of expertise and things that
Hmm.
didn't demand other skills that I had to depend on other people for. But when I heard about large scale multifamily, that's when it started to kind of click because now I'm an asset manager, I'm a general partner, I underwrite deals, which is, math, which is great, just like coming up with a business plan. But then the property management day-to-day tasks are done by third-party property managers you employ on site, like maintenance, full-time, etc. Once you scale to at least, 70, 80 doors and higher and, bigger properties. And that's where my journey into multifamily started.
Now, at what point, kind of, walk through what period of time, when did you just start doing that or make that transition over to doing more focus on the real estate side?
So the real estate, one of the biggest reasons I was looking for was a tax break of some kind and something where, between my investments and my husband's W-2, we had no business or anything else to write off our taxes. And so I turned to real estate predominantly for that reason and to have, a more diversified portfolio instead of purely being focused on the stock market and a few commodities. So that's where that started. And multifamily was extremely good for a few years, like 2018 until about 21, 22, it was really good. And then it started failing, in my opinion, when you bought properties at the peak of the market cycle, which is 2021 and 2022. Very few deals have retained their value from that time frame. And so today you can't sell a property if you acquired it in that time frame. So hopefully you're able to cash flow and hold on until maybe 27 or 28 when you think you might get that relief. So, it's been a mixed bag, is what I'd say. Just like even with stock market, there's always fluctuations. There's years when it did extremely well, and then there's years when it didn't. The only difference is the liquidity. You've got a lot of liquidity with the stock market that you don't with real estate. So, don't invest with any money that you can't afford to wait on or even potentially lose, right? Keep your 6 months to 12 months of living expenses, etc. So yeah, I went into multifamily, and when multifamily didn't quite produce the cash flow because of the interest rates going up so drastically, that's when I went into technology fund again, back to my roots in tech, as well as oil and gas for that tax benefits. But again, crude oil, those prices will be fluctuating quite a bit too. So as with any investment, you got to allocate very carefully in your portfolio to keep it
Hmm.
balanced without too much in one thing.
No, so you do that in real estate, you kind of come back to the technology side, you kind of do a mixture of various things with entrepreneurship. So
Mm.
walk through, kind of catch us up where things at today, kind of what was that transition that led to kind of what you're focused on now?
The biggest reasons again was that real estate was so good for a while. And when the interest rates started going up, you just had no deal flow for like over a year. And at that time, I still needed something for my taxes. And that's when I turned to oil and gas because just the depreciation alone would give you such a great return for a few years. And then the crude oil prices were fine. They're falling a little bit now. And so you do your break even analysis just like you would with real estate. What's my break even occupancy? What's my break even, number to pay all my bills. Same way with crude oil, you have that number and you allocate a
Hmm.
certain portion of your portfolio that for which, just the depreciation benefits would be enough to carry you through for a couple of years till all of that stabilizes. So I do that. And then the technology fund is for the high growth. So when you have money sitting in old 401ks, etc., you're not really waiting on the cash flow from it. So you can wait a few years and hope that it, goes up drastically, like a nice 10x kind of return rather than just a, oh, let me get 1.5, 2x, maybe in 5 years, kind of the more sedate portfolio, shall we say, you know. So a little
No,
blend of all of that. The higher risk, a little bit more like venture capital fund, and then higher risk, higher returns versus you want the Sharpie ratio of nicely adjusted, well risk adjusted returns. So the
no,
sort of
that
portfolio is what that's like.
no, that makes perfect sense, and sounds like it's been a good iteration, evolution of things. So, kind of catching up today now. If you're to look out, kind of the next 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things headed, or what's the next step that's in store for you?
Cash is always king, so keep 6 to 12 months of living expenses always. Keep it in liquid things. So short-term debt funds are getting very popular. So funding a friend's fix and flip where you're in a first lien position is always good. If you're doing any kind of a debt fund, which I've looked at many, try to see what's the underlying asset and how strong are its financials to be able to pay you back. Because no matter how much you trust a person, the asset backing it also has to be good enough to cash flow and pay you back that 14%. So if your asset is actually a distressed multifamily deal that needs a few dollars to extend its life, to prolong its life for another year or two, because they're trying to extend it because of getting a bridge loan and they need that to buy a rate cap again. Okay, that is a struggling deal. So you might want to
Mm.
think twice before putting money into such a debt fund versus, you're in first lien position, not behind some lender. So what is the value of that property today? Let's say it's $20 million and the loan on it is also $20 million. Where is your chance of putting additional equity and then earning that double-digit return on it? That's low. So really assess the risk of the financials of the asset that's backing this fund to make that decision. But if you're first lien position, you can do a flip, you can do short-term debt funds, etc. And it's recourse type of debt. Then I think those are definitely good for you to keep cycling your money without getting it held up long term. And then for the tax purposes, I'm still doing some oil and gas. And the rest of it, I mean, liquidity in the stock market. I love trading options. So I'm not betting on the stock market shooting up anytime in the near future. So you can bet on some stocks going down as well and still make money in it if you know how to trade your put options, right? So again, that's from years of being in an investor club. But cash is always king. Keep it.
Awesome. Well, sounds like a good direction to head, and some good opportunities yet in front of you. So with that, now that we've kind of caught up to the present day of the journey, and even looking a bit into the futures to where things are headed, great time to transition to the couple questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll dive to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
The worst business decision I made was I liked someone and they seemed decent and hardworking, etc. And so I didn't pay attention to the financials of the asset behind it. And I invested passively in a deal with them, and the deal has lost 100% of its money. They just did not know asset management. They were newbies. They just underwrote a deal with best case scenarios. They didn't stress test it. They didn't have enough experience. And so I put together a checklist on how to vet a sponsorship team as well as a deal that I now keep, following religiously, and I keep adding more and more things to that list to make smarter decisions. So yeah, that was a costly mistake in the sense that I lost all of my capital, but it taught me so much as well to be careful that no matter how much you know, like, and trust someone, their experience in that asset class, in that market, and their focus, because acquisition fees so high, people are always chasing the next deal. There's very few people who sit down and execute the plan and take care of operations. And so you want to know how much time, how much liquidity they have post close, etc., that they're going to dedicate to this deal. They might have $1 million in liquidity, but if they're spread thin across 15 deals, that's not much money for your one deal where you're investing in. So there's so many
No, that's awesome.
nuances to
Yeah.
that vetting process.
Yeah, and you kind of transition to the second question I'd like to ask you, but I'll follow up with that as well, which is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
Stay liquid. Keep as much liquidity as you can. Or if you're prepared to go all out, I mean, like literally, talk to a friend about sleeping in their couch with a sleeping bag kind of situation. Really understand that whatever you're planning for your business to launch and execute, etc., plan for bigger delays, more expenses, more uncertainty in the market, whether it's tariffs, whether it's labor laws, etc., your cost of materials, your cost of labor, all of that is going to go much higher than you anticipate. And most permits, most things take longer than you anticipate. So talk to somebody who's walked those exact shoes before, who's done exactly that before, and ask them how much additional risk is there in today's environment, and be very careful.
No, definitely is some great advice and great takeaways. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Find me on LinkedIn. Find me at engineer-capital.com. And then if you're an operator with a struggling deal, you can find me at aceoperators.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, to expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com and apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. Along your journey, if you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you so much, Devin.